In this video, I'm going to address some common Halloween hazards that we see that lead to teens and young adults getting in trouble with the law. Over 14 years of experience in the criminal defense arena, I have seen the same types of things coming up almost every year at or around Halloween that leads to charges. I'm Ghanouni, founder and managing attorney at the teen and young adult defense firm, where we focus on protecting the futures of people who are in their teens through their mid-20s when they get in trouble with the law. So the places that we typically see issues come up are surrounding either like criminal trespass charges, criminal damage to property charges, alcohol-related charges, drug-related charges. There's all kinds of other stuff that comes up out there too around Halloween, but those tend to be the most common ones that we see, the ones that we see at least a handful of almost every year contacting our office, which means that there's probably lots more out there outside of those contacting our office. And some of them are situations that somebody doesn't even realize they're doing anything wrong. So when I talk about things like the criminal trespassing side or the criminal damage to property, sometimes what we see in these situations are a group of kids gets together around Halloween and says, hey, I've heard this old abandoned house is haunted. I've heard this old graveyard is haunted. I've heard this old church is haunted. And they get together and they all pile in their car and they go to look at the haunted area. And what we see sometimes are some of those are private property, and the individuals end up getting charged with criminal trespass for going out there and being out there when they shouldn't be out there. There's no trespassing signs or other things like that. Some scenarios that we see are people go out to those types of properties to explore them, look for ghosts or things like that. And then there's actually either damage done to the property by the group that they're with, or there's damage that's been done to the property by the time they got there, and the police show up and they get blamed for the damage and end up getting charges out of that type of situation. We've seen that happen also at graveyards with headstones being damaged, and which can lead to more serious charges as well. And the problem is that you deal with is not only is it that like, hey, my kid is going with these other kids, and I know my kid wouldn't do any damage, but if your kid's there with the other kids and there is damage that's done, who ends up, the police, it's sometimes hard for them to identify who specifically caused the damage. And also in the law, there is what they call a party to a crime theory, which can mean that your kid could be charged even if he or she wasn't the one to directly do the damage, depending on the circumstances around how the damage was done. Now, outside of the trespassing type things, the damage type things that we see, the other thing that we typically see are underage possession of alcohol charges as well as drug charges. There's a lot of parties around this time of year. There's a lot of things where people think it's going to be fun to be under the influence around Halloween, those types of things. And you got to realize that police are aware of that. So there is a heightened police force out there that is especially looking for people who are under the influence of drugs and alcohol. And so you want to make sure that you're not consuming any drugs, that you're not using any alcohol if you're under 21, that you're not sharing any alcohol with people who are under 21, so that you don't run into these problems. And really best practices is not to be anywhere where these types of things are happening. And we've definitely had the cases where people go to a house party and some of the neighbors see a bunch of young people going into a house, and the police end up getting called out there, and everybody in the house ends up getting charged because they can't identify whose drugs were who was actually drinking the alcohol, things like that. And so they just end up charging everybody, which is not what you want to see happen. So not only do you want to make sure that you stay away from situations that can lead to getting charged with criminal trespass, criminal damage to property, you also want to make sure that you're not using any drugs or alcohol, which is probably good advice generally speaking as well, but also that you're not anywhere where those things are taking place, so that you don't end up getting in trouble for drugs or alcohol that somebody else is using or somebody else has on their person. And you certainly want to make sure those types of things don't end up in your car as well. So be safe this Halloween. Make sure that you take this advice and that you're not in any of these situations that can lead to criminal charges. But if you or somebody ends up with any type of criminal charges from this Halloween and they need help, please feel free to contact us for a defense strategy meeting. We'd love to help you if it's a situation that we believe we can help with.